gonna do anything like take the gold base. I'm a huge fan of the gold base on this map, and I don't see a lot of Zerg players do it. Even Bly didn't do it, so my guess is we're not gonna see it, but I would like to see it.
Yeah. There's definitely some fun shenanigans that can happen in this matchup on this map. But we'll start down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map. You know him, you love him. It is Team Clash's Reynor.
And the chat was giggling at us saying this man is smart, but he is brilliant, I assure you. His name is Harstem. He's just goofy, you know?
Yeah, he is. I have to say though, like, I don't want this to be misinterpreted as me saying that Harstem doesn't work hard or anything like that, but like, I think Harstem has a lot of talent to be able to be someone who is so successful in so many different fields, right? He is someone who's been doing commentating and stuff. He's actually done some of the DreamHack like B-stream work and for other events and whatnot. He's obviously like a very successful player who's been able to make it into the DreamHack like group stages, even made it to the playoffs every so often. Like, he's also a content creator and like a streamer and also a YouTuber who does more than just like, here's my gameplay, enjoy it. He does like strategic analysis and teaching stuff. Like, he is so talented to be able to pursue so many different avenues and actually be very skilled at all of them, I have to say.
Yeah, he's a creative, multifaceted individual, and he is, like I said, you know, like, he's very adaptive, very intelligent. I think he can do a lot of different things. Very personable. Yeah. So, you know, he's that's a skill set in its own right. Tells great jokes, as we saw yesterday actually. So, yeah, Harstem is great.
Yeah, great joke about what he told. Apparently, I learned that that was actually a joke told last season, as I tried to send it to Rotterdam. But
it was told. I lived with Harstem as well for a little bit. I think that is a mini racer joke, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but Harstem, I mean, his delivery yesterday, it was better than I've ever heard the joke told.
Yeah.
And Mini Racer has good delivery, but Harstem that was out of this world.
Yeah, if you guys are wondering what we're talking about, go check out the ESL_SC2 Twitter, I think it was, that tweeted out a little clip of it, so you guys can find it there. But this game is actually starting to shape on up. We do have normal looking base locations thus far for Reynor and for Harstem. No gold bases or anything. We do have a Stargate on the way as well for Harstem.
Yeah, and I love this already from him, knowing that there is a third not on location. He's going to go to the main base with the Adept. There isn't much defense to be found there. The Shade is actually going to go outwards just to be a little bit safe, not managing to find any transferring drones. But at least gets a scout onto the natural base, sees that there is no drone transfer, and potentially forced out some links, which he didn't, but, you know, he could have forced some extra links.
Yeah, it's the extra little maneuvers that you want to do in those early games of good old PvZ. Now, PvZ has been a funky matchup lately. We've been seeing a lot of the big Sky Toss armies and stuff still kind of making their appearances. Some of the games have been drawn out a little bit longer, and I think that it's always something to keep an eye out for if the Protoss players want to go in that direction, and if the Zerg players decide to, you know, embrace it, or if they decide to just go for a queen pull or something along those lines, get in your opponent's face and kind of shut things down.
Yeah, very nice pick off on the probe as well from Reynor, as that's going to delay the expansion of Harstem. Now he will be able to drop it down, and as soon as he does, he knows that there's an Adept there. Reynor tries to poke in and double checks that there's not an Adept, or that there is an Adept at the wall. And if there wasn't, he just wins the game, right? And that's the scary thing about Reynor, is you make one mistake, he's going to be checking for it. He has the APM and the resources to do so.
Yeah, very, very fast player who will always be able to find those little opportunities to try and snag an easy win here or there. Now tries to go in, sees that the second Adept is already warping in, third Adept comes forward as well, and that third base should be pretty gosh darn secure against any kind of small ling run-bys. We do already have +1 air weapons and a second Stargate on the way, though, Wardy. So, oh, sorry.
Okay, Ravi. That was your.
You know, you also called me Wardy, so I feel like we're even now.
Yeah.
But you know, buckle in, take a seat. I'm gonna change my standing desk to a sitting desk now. Fun seeing this.
Alrighty. Well, we'll see what happens. As Reynor is gonna poke in once again, and again poke in to check that there is an adept still holding position at the natural base. This moves like, you know, like nothing comes off them, but it's costed him like a couple of links to try and potentially just get an overwhelming advantage multiple times. Like, I would be terrified playing against Reynor of making any sort of mistake. At the same time, Harstem looking for his own opening here with these Adepts and Void Rays. They're gonna put some damage onto the Queen, force the Lynx not to come chase by shading on forward, and then just cancel the shade. So good poke.
Yeah, really nicely handled so far. There's also the stasis trap trying to happen over at the third base. Reynor's pretty quick, only has 2 drones trapped in over there, but actually there's no Spore Caller. The Queens are a little bit further behind, so Oracle still manages to get 3 workers and get out of there alive. So definitely a nice kind of continued harassment and control there from Harstem so far.
Yeah, very, very well done. I'm not sure about this continued harassment at the front, though, but the Lynx are gonna once again be pinned back by those shades. Harstem is just trying to buy as much time as possible and posturing so that Reynor won't be on his side of the map as he masses up Phoenixes, which are also gonna have +1 attack when they move out. So they're gonna be particularly effective against those Queens as well. Reynor finally getting in a scout that he has been looking for, but it's gonna be a little bit late to scout triple Stargate Phoenix. He's gonna drop 1 Spore right away. He's gonna need a lot more than that, though.
Yeah, and he's trying to run those Queens a bit further back. He doesn't want to get any of these Queens caught out by themselves, because the Queen count is very, very important for making sure they can help push a lot of these units back. The Spore Caller's still pretty late, so these Phoenix are going to have free pickings inside the main base before the Spore Caller's finished off. Adepts do find a not so great shade and all get picked off and surrounded very, very quickly, but just look at that Phoenix count. With 3 coming out at a time, he's already outnumbering the Queens.
Yeah, that Adept Shade, though, was a little bit hopeful. I think that this was a great maneuver from Harstem, and against a lower, lesser player, maybe the distraction is just enough for those Adepts. But of course, Reynor is going to be paying attention. Of course, Reynor is going to have the resources to look at 2 places at once, just about. And so those Adepts die for free, and now there isn't those Adepts to protect them here. The Zealots are going to get surrounded, not in a perfect position. Reynor is once again going to check and capitalize on any mistakes, and now Harstem is slipping a little bit, as now some Banelings, not the best Banelings in the world, but now with all of those units killed preemptively, there's nothing to defend here. Those Phoenixes are going to have to pick up a Baneling, I would guess, at least.
Oracle manages to target fire down that Baneling. A handful of workers are still going to end up falling, but also importantly, Harstem has to pull back all of his Phoenix, both to try and help out, potentially to help defend, but also just because you don't want to leave your Phoenix laying around if you know you don't have the extra attention to focus on them and make sure that they aren't just getting snagged or picked off by Queens.
Yeah, Harstem, though, cognizant of where those units headed, it's to the north, and so he continues to wall off the north. That's going to be really helpful, and does continue to find some damage with his Phoenix as well. They are in great enough numbers that they shouldn't, I was going to say, be dying. The sentry gets repositioned, and that is the smarts of Harstem. I mean, lovely defense there by him. Unfortunately for him, the 3rd gets cancelled, the 4th gets cancelled rather. At the same time, he is picking up some more workers. 12 have gone down in this round, but Reynor is relentless at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the really difficult things to manage, is that the Zergling run-bys, yes, there's absolutely control involved in stuff, but once you have the Zerglings in the mineral line and they're picking, like the probes are there, you're kind of just attacking in, right? You're just doing the damage. You're going to right-click down the Nexus, and then you can focus your attention a little bit elsewhere. The Phoenix are only useful if you are directly controlling them. If you aren't actively lifting up workers, you aren't killing anything with them.
Yeah, and I mean, lifting up Zerglings is one of the worst things that you could use those Phoenixes for. They only cost, half of a worker's worth, so it's the least worthy unit in the game. It feels bad, and the Phoenixes are out of energy anyway. And now with that 3rd going down, I mean, Harstem is kind of quickly running out of options as Reynor continues on his aggression. He is droning back up. He is already at a hive somehow, making Vipers, an Ultralisk Cavern on the way. Things are looking incredible for the Academy.
Yeah, I think the reason why Harstem is still sticking out because he had 3 carriers on the way, and he's maybe hoping, all right, maybe, just maybe, I can get out these carriers, push across the map with an unprepared Reynor who's just been investing into so many Lings and Banelings. I've done all this damage with the Phoenix against your drone count, but I think as soon as he sees those Vipers and just the Queens are going to be able to deal with those carriers so quickly, this is a very, very tough ask for Harstem with this push.
Yeah, the creep spread is fantastic as well for Reynor on a map that is very difficult to creep turn on. He has found a way to cover for most of it. Doesn't have creep everywhere, but he has creep in every avenue that Harstem could be coming from. So that is extremely good for him. The carriers are gonna be forced to move on forward. There's not an observer even to at least clear this creep, and the Vipers are gonna reveal themselves. Good micro to split those Phoenixes that are parasitic bombed from Harstem. The carriers are not gonna have an easy time with that, as they are a little bit chunky, and with, like you said, with this many queens, the interceptors are not gonna stand much of a chance.
It does find the Vipers, but my god, those transfuses on the Vipers doesn't even lose one. GG, Reynor finally ends up taking that game and goes up in the series 1-0. But I have to say, like, at least at the start, Harstem was doing a pretty good job. It was really just, you know, like you were saying, when the Ling run-bys and things started getting involved, that's when things started falling apart there for Harstem.
Yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, like you said, Harstem deflects the first few pokes of Reynor that are really just scouting pokes at no peril to him. And then he gets a really good run-by, I guess you could say, with the Phoenix, but also commits the shades from the Adepts, which could be game-ending against another player, but instead just wastes 6 Adepts that were otherwise defending that third base easily against the next run-by. Instead, the next run-by does a lot of damage, forces another warp in, and unfortunately for Harstem, this time around, his units were not in position, right? So loses like 2-3 Zealots, a Sentry or something like that, surrounded without killing barely anything. And if those units are in the perfect position, and again, it's not like these are gigantic mistakes from Harstem, it's just that Reynor will check so often and so quickly and so, and while doing everything else perfectly, that if you're not ready at any given point in time, you will get punished. And that's exactly what happens, pounces on those units, and now we have like, I don't know, 1100 resources or something that he should have had for an easy defense. Instead, his Nexus ends up dying, and it's just lights out from there.
Yeah, I really love the way that you put it also, is that that's one of the advantages you get from being such a fast player, is that you get to do things like check in on your opponent and making sure that all their units are in position, like they're all ready to react more often if you're a faster player, because you have more cycles basically free and available to control your units outside of your macro cycles. That's one of the advantages that's afforded by being such a fast player.
Yeah, and in that, I mean, Zerg in the early game, they would be the best race for that, right? Because Zerglings are so cheap and they are the fastest unit in the game effectively, right? So you can really just get in there. Hey, you lose a couple Zerglings, who cares, right? That's no cost for what they are doing in checking, in knowing, in gathering information, and potentially getting an overwhelming advantage. And Reynor does that consistently, one of the best players at checking in and trying to, he always gets run-bys, and it's not that he gets lucky or that players aren't paying attention against them. It's that he tries over and over until they work.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we're moving into Jagannath. Down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have the red Zerg player from Team Clash. He is Reynor, sitting up 1-0.
Ooh, 12th pull. And in the top right-hand side, will he be ready for a 12th pull? It is for Team Liquid, Harstem. And I actually am gonna say, I mean, there's not too much micro that you can do better than most other pro players with a 12 pull. Your 12 pull is not going to hit much earlier than any other player can hit. And Harstem, we've been talking about it. He is a very intelligent player. He will have figured out potentially his own way, or or conform to the traditional way of dealing with this, but he will know how to deal with this. I think that this is maybe a small mistake from Reynor, because it takes so much agency away from him from the rest of the game, and to get into those speedlings. I talk about it as it's a great difficult tech to get to, but he's gonna be foregoing that for the early game, and Harstem's gonna be well aware of what's going on. I already like it for the Dutch play.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also, to kind of a little bit of your points, the last game Harstem absolutely did go for the scout. It's not like he did some kind of weird thing where he said, I'm not going to bother with the probe scout, and I'm going to wait for an adept to make its way across the map and get some information. Now, he immediately is going there to block the hatchery, as most Protoss players tend to do. So he has a very quick scout on all of this. He's going to be getting up that Zealot to try and get up a defense, push these Zerglings back. By no means should this be able to end the game unless Harstem really messes up.
Yeah, he would have to mess up big time. The position on the Cybercore is good. It's next to the Zealot. A lot of players make the mistake to make their second gateway there and the Cybercore on the edge, in which case the Cybercore would be getting chunked on right now instead of the gateway, which is much more expendable because you don't need the gateway as much. So really good defense from Harstem. and he hasn't done anything really, right? Like he hasn't done anything special, but it's already looking like a strong defense. So Reynor already droning up, but he's going to be a little bit behind. He's already 5 workers behind the back.
Yeah, that's going to be something annoying. Now, the Zerglings do manage to get in right as the Adept pops out. So one Zergling making its way forward would theoretically be able to get some scouting information, but it's not really getting any additional scouting information that the Overlord isn't seeing. Now, the rest of the Zerglings might be able to move in if they really wanted to, but it's like you said before, Gats, like there's no Zergling speed on the way. If you go in there, if you commit too far forward, you're kind of sentencing your Zerglings to their own deaths.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, at least with the 12 pool, you will be able to get gateways worth, right? But Harstem had so much time from that probe being on the other side from the pylon that he was pretending to make that he then canceled, and from Reynor committing to chasing that probe, that he doesn't actually even have to finish the gateway for it to just die, and instead ends up canceling it because he is a very smart player and gets an even bigger advantage than most players would, right? He has lost nothing.
Yeah. It's been a pretty nice start so far. We'll see if he can continue on forward as the 2 Adepts make their way out. Remember, Zergling speed not going to be available, so it's going to be heavily up to having these Zerglings already in position for any shades and having the Queens in position. Now, it looks like he doesn't want to overcommit with these 2 Adepts, which I think absolutely makes sense. But even just getting a scout out on how many Zerglings extra did you make, how many drones are you making, you're not going for some kind of crazy Queen walk or something, or preparing for something else like that. And just having an idea of what his opponent is up to is important.
Yeah, one thing that Reynor did that, shows his own class is not to waste any of those surgeons, right? Just uses one single surgeon to scout, which is fine, though. I mean, you could almost anticipate that there wouldn't be anything at the main of Harstem at that given point in time. But the rest of the Zerglings doubled down as defense, so he didn't have to invest into that. It's just that the investment that he would have done was much earlier than he would have liked. And so Harstem does get those edges regardless. Now, Reynor establishing a 3rd base Rabbi, and the game will more or less stabilize into a normal-ish PVC with a slight advantage for the Dutch.
Yeah. Zerglings managed to get in on top of the Adept before it manages to make its way over to the mineral line. Now, Zealots are going to be able to hold their own for a little bit, but even those are going to end up falling over here with some nice micro there from Reynor. 3 Zerglings left alive. That's enough to pick off the probe and start whittling away at the pylon. Now the Oracle has to waste energy to take care of these Zerglings, which, even though it doesn't activate this pulsar beam for long, takes 25 energy just to activate.
Yeah, it's great trades from Reynor. It also gets Cassius Wind of that Oracle like you were pointing out to, and potentially forcing more weapons from Harstem, who hasn't gone for the additional weapons. I love that because it's going to allow him to get his his tech and whatever he needs other than units right now in place. It is a little bit of a risk because if Reynor had been making links behind this to take down this 3rd, he surely would be able to. But I like it. He doesn't replace the units that he lost. That is the kind of maneuver that seems a little bit risky that he has to take and try to anticipate and try to read into his opponent and what the best move from them might be.
Yeah, we'll see how it actually ends up panning on out. We already have some roaches being made, and a decent number of them as well. So going to be able to help deal with any kind of small groups of units and stuff for Adepts making their way around or trying to poke forward. But it is going to be a pretty decent number of gateways flooding on out alongside Charge finishing on up. So this is going to be a pretty big attack that Reynor absolutely needs to be prepared for.
Yeah, and I mean, there is 9 queens and roaches, so I think it's likely that we actually see Reynor moving out with a queen walk himself, which plays right into Harstem's hands because, like you have said, he is making a lot of gateways, a lot of zealots with Charge. He delayed them. This is a little bit awkward, but he delayed them, which is a good thing because it allowed for his production to get set up further. And queens are not very good against charge slots, so yeah, both attacks run into each other. Usually not a good thing for the attacking player, but seeing as Reynor was out of position, Harstem is gonna have a decent time with that starting attack. Now, Reynor is pulled back, and he was all-inning, so, I mean, if Reynor had just all-in into Harstem, if Harstem had caught wind of what's going on, and knew that Reynor was planning to Queen March across the map, this would have been a very easy defense and closed-out game. As it stands, it's kind of up to Reynor to decide, and he is still gonna go for it, which I'm not sure not sure I like for him too much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see, but like I really felt like Harstem, I think he ran in with his initial zealots on the right-hand side that we saw on with our wonderful observer, but There were also some Zells that came in from the top left-hand side, so those get caught. And it felt like Harstem already lost 3 Zealots before like the fight kind of started. Then it's like, yes, the Queens don't do as well versus the Zealots. Oh god, losing the Voider really sucks. But
Yeah.
Queens don't do very well versus the Zealots, but Roaches actually do pretty well if they're able to clump up and everything.
Oh yeah.
I actually feel like Harstem's in a kind of tough spot, right?
I'm not quite sure. I think that he can definitely defend this, especially with DTs coming up. He is on 3 base versus 3 base. The supply can be deceiving when there's a lot of Roaches in play.
That's true.
I think if Reynor attacks into Harstem, which was his original plan, then Harstem would stand a great chance, to be honest. And like I said, when Reynor was moving out for the second time, I thought that was a mistake. Reynor reevaluated and pulled back. I like this better for him. But if he just sits back, I mean, he doesn't have that much more room to scale with whereas Harstem is adding disruptors. And if he can situate a 4th, I think he's still in a fine position.
Yeah, DTs are actually going to be able to find some extra damage here as well. So Harstem's definitely going to be happy about that, as DT has already forced out a few Overseers now. Sportcrawler is sitting in the main base, and Harstem is looking to try and move around. I love the recall over there. So maybe, actually, Reynor's already pulling all of his units away. So it looks like he's recognized that there was a recall as well. So he's already pulled his units forward to the front.
Yes, indeed. Here comes the attack finally from Harstem, or from Reynor, but he's gonna be running into Disruptors. He is maxed. It is a much more delayed attack. There are Force Fields from Harstem. There is a counter backstab War Prism, which I'm not sure that he needs. I think if he just holds, that's gonna be enough. Good Force Fields there. There is the Disruptor, but he's a little bit sectioned off. Let's see if he can get a good shot here. Does get 3 Ravagers. That is juicy. That is a lot of resources used or spent from Reynor. The second Disruptor shot completely useless though, and the shield battery that's being overcharged is not actually healing the units on the left of it. It is finding at least some value on healing that cannon, but Harstem is a little bit trapped here as the Disruptors were not able to consolidate with his army, and mostly there are Stalkers who walked in, and yeah, I think you're right, Ravi. I think this is looking very, very dire now for Harstem.
Yeah, this is gonna get...
He might just die.
Yeah, that's really tough at the very end. GG. Reynor is going to take the 2-0 there over Harstem.